Some desultory firing at the nearest fugitives ended the battle. Crowds on the breakwater of Cadiz and the nearest beaches had watched all the afternoon the great bank of smoke on the horizon, and listened to the rumbling thunder of the cannonade. After sunset ship after ship came in, bringing news of disaster, and all the night wounded men were being conveyed to the hospitals. More than half of the Allied fleet had been taken or destroyed. The 4 ships that escaped with Dumanoir were captured a few days later by a squadron under Sir Richard Strachan. The French ships that escaped into Cadiz were taken possession of by the Spanish insurgents when Spain rose against the French, and Cadiz joined the revolt. As the battle ended, the British fleet was, to use the expression of the Neptune's log, in all directions. The sun was going down, the sky was overcast, and the rising swell and increasing wind told of the coming storm. Most of the prizes had been dismasted. Many of them were leaking badly. Some of the ships that had taken them were in almost as damaged a condition, and many of them were short-handed, with heavy losses in battle and detachments sent on board the captured vessels. The crews were busy clearing the decks, getting up improvised jury masts, and repairing the badly cut-up rigging, where the masts still stood. Nelson's final order had been to anchor, to ride out the expected gale. Collingwood doubted if this would be safer than trying to make Gibraltar, and he busied himself getting the scattered fleet and prizes together, and tacking to the south-westward. The gale that swept all the coasts of Western Europe caught the disabled fleet with a hostile shore under its lee. Only 4 of the prizes, and those the poorer ships of the lot, ever saw Gibraltar. Ship after ship went down. Others were abandoned and burnt. Others drove ashore. In these last instances the British prize crews were rescued and kindly treated by the Spanish coast population. One ship, the Algeciras, was retaken by the French prisoners and carried into Cadiz. Another, the big Santa Ana, was recaptured as she drifted helplessly off the port. But though there were few trophies left after the great storm, Trafalgar had finally broken the naval power of Napoleon, freed England from all fear of invasion, and given her the undisputed empire of the sea. Yet there were only half-hearted rejoicings at home. The loss of Nelson seemed a dear price to pay, even for such a victory. Some 2,500 men were killed and wounded in the victorious fleet. Of the losses of the Allies it is difficult to give an estimate. Every ship that was closely engaged suffered severely, and hundreds of wounded went down in several of those that sank in the storm. For weeks after, search parties, riding along the shores from Cadiz to Cape Trafalgar, gathered every day a grim harvest of corpses drifted to land by the Atlantic tides. The Allied loss was at least 7,000 men, and may have been considerably greater. The news came to England just after something like a panic had been caused by the tidings of the surrender of a whole Austrian army at Ulm. It reached Napoleon in the midst of his triumphs to warn him that his power was bounded by the seas that washed the shores of the continent. Well did Meredith say that in his last great fight Nelson drove the smoke of Trafalgar to darken the blaze of Austerlitz. End of Chapter 9, Part 3.